Prabhu. Thank you for having me on. And as you mentioned, we met at the Pittsburgh airport while I was flying from Calgary to Toronto, and my wife and I, we were coming to Pittsburgh, and we met at the airport, and we went to the GBC College together. So I would like to open with a small prayer, and we'll kind of get into the nectar of book distribution. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness in ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. I offer my obeisances to Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar and all others in the line of devotion. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I would like to briefly read a passage, and I'm reading it from a book called Preaching is the Essence. So Prabhupada very much coined this sayings that, utility is the principle, books are the basis, preaching is the essence. So there's a book made that is Preaching is the Essence. And out of that, it basically quotes several passages that support sharing Krishna consciousness. And one of that is it being the best welfare activity. So it's mentioned here that the word Atmanupyena refers to thinking of others to be like oneself. One can very intelligently conclude that without devotional service, without becoming Krishna conscious, one cannot be happy. Therefore, the duty of all devotees is to preach Krishna consciousness everywhere, all over the world, because all living entities without Krishna consciousness are suffering from the pangs of material existence. To preach Krishna consciousness is the best welfare activity. Indeed, it is described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as para upakara, work for the true benefit of others. And there's another sentence or a paragraph that states that uh, the living entity must preach this knowledge of self-realization after perfecting himself and understanding his own position as an eternal servant of Krishna. Preaching this is showing real mercy to the living entities. Other types of humanitarian work may be temporarily beneficial for the body, but because a living entity is spirit soul, ultimately one can show him real mercy only by revealing knowledge of his spiritual existence. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Jivara Swarupai Krishnara Nityadas. Every living entity is constitutionally a servant of Krishna. One should know this fact perfectly and should preach it to the mass of the people. So those two are purports from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7 and Canto 4. So 7.7.53 and 4.29.1b. So from here, we see that Srila Prabhupada has mentioned that, um, first of all, we have to be convinced of the fact that the lifestyle and activities of Krishna consciousness is not only good for oneself, but it's good to have that type of person around in the world. Because in the world, there's a lot of calamities, there's lots of wars, there's lots of fighting. Um, and how can we be an instrument of goodwill and peace? And Vaisheshika Prabhu mentions that, be an ambassador of goodwill. So one thing is we have to ourselves inculcate that spiritual energy and vibration, and then to go out in society because we are very much spiritual activists in one sense, that we don't just be in our comfort zones and simply just chanting away, but we also have this component of going out there. And we see that in order to be part of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's nocturnal kirtans, you had to be part of the outreach as well. It's not that anybody and everybody could just get in. So similarly, if we also want to advance in our Krishna consciousness, it's one hand we have to do our own practice, and on another hand we have to think about how do we share this message in a way that can be received by all kinds of audiences, and making sure that we are there for them. And that is described as the highest welfare activity because by automatically being Krishna conscious, you're compassionate towards, your neighbors, you're compassionate towards the animals, you're compassionate towards your family and society in general, right? You become a first class gentleman or gentle lady, and live a life that is selfless. And that is such a high virtue and ethical life to live in. So by automatically being a devotee, you have equal vision for others, you try to help others, and you try to help yourself as well. And we don't have to separately join a society for animal welfare or equality this, equality that. By being a devotee, you just knock all of those out and you practice that anyway. So it's something that we must be convinced of, and essentially just like we take a shower or brush our teeth every day, um, having our spiritual practice, including reading Srila Prabhupada's books on a daily basis, will inculcate the lifestyle in which we should live and also think while we're out in society. And then when we practice that, that's like practicing our mantras. So Vaisheshika Prabhu, who's our global minister for book distribution, mentioned in a discourse recently that traditionally, the priestly people would practice their mantras and see the power of the mantras. But now in this day and age, it's hard to meet people who are that pure. But one of the ways where we can practice our mantras, which is the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, is to go out there, meet people, and see whether we are having that equal vision. Are we going deeper into loving Radha and Krishna and serving the spiritual master? So that can be done when we take a risk and go out there and go outside of our comfort zone. Because if you're within our comfort zone, it's hard to really grow. And you might oftentimes question yourself, am I growing or am I just being stagnant in my, position in my spiritual practice and so forth in my life? But the whole uniqueness about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is this missionary aspect. It's very dynamic. It's not static. So you're always meditating and thinking that how can I, use my talents, whatever my Krishna given talents are, in Krishna's service, right? And as Bhagwan Narada Prabhu mentioned, him and his spouse are, very much into the creative side of things, creating unique videos and stuff. So yeah, you have a certain propensity, and how can you use that propensity in the service of Krishna and showcasing that to others? So each one of us has a unique propensity that we have to offer to the world. So we follow the process of yukta vairagya, which is to use things we have which come from Krishna, including our own, abilities as people, to use that in the service of Krishna. So when we think of that, we should just think of what are our strengths and how can we use that in furthering this wonderful message that we have in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Bhagavatam, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and all the small books like Ishopanishad and so forth. And how do we make it accessible? How do we make it available? And it's not about results, it's about effort. Effort is the most important thing. You put your best level effort, you go out there, you make something that's sustainable for yourself. And in doing so, you also grow in your Krishna consciousness because not only you're learning, but you're also applying. And both are very central towards um, uh, your Krishna conscious practice and also going ahead. So I wanted to see if there's any sort of reflections anybody had or any sort of questions before I kind of go ahead on what I just said, based on reading and going ahead and sharing. I'll open it up.
Yeah, I like what you said about using our talents and abilities in Krishna consciousness. It really helps things become easier, you know. A lot of times, especially devotees in the beginning, one of the main questions we always hear is, how do I balance work and my spiritual life? But then we've heard in different talks and scriptures that it's not about taking anything away, but just adding Krishna to it. So what we're doing is fine, but we just add Krishna to it and then we purify it. This Yukta Vairagya concept that Rupa Goswami gives us, Nectar of Devotion. So it's not so much about what we need to take away, but what we need to add, and then that helps establish our faith, and it makes us feel a lot more enthusiastic in our practice. So utilizing everything in Krishna service, it's difficulty because it's an austerity. Actually, Prabhupada says it's an austerity to chant because we don't have so much of a taste for it, but we just keep chanting. So I like that idea and that concept of utilizing our talents, our abilities, our facilities, everything in Krishna service so we can feel most satisfied.
Okay, that's nice. Any other points or reflections anybody had? Okay. If not, I can mention this for sure that, we need everybody in this, wonderful movement, whether the people are monastic, senior monastic, junior monastic, people who have space for others, like Bhagavad Narada does oftenly, and then also those who are householders. How do we balance that? Well, first thing is it's exciting to have a mission to be a part of because otherwise, whatever your vocation may be, if it's not related to Krishna consciousness directly, then it can drag one down. But I think what's healthy to do is have boundaries in your life where you think of, okay, what is my higher purpose here? And oftentimes I think of this as well as whenever I put boundaries when it comes to my work and my spiritual life, I'm putting my foot down for Krishna. And that is one form of surrender. And we don't have to be ashamed of having this sort of vocation because oftentimes devotees struggle with it because we see from our householder Acharya inspiration, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, if one reads his life, one can see that, okay, he had a strict routine in terms of doing a spiritual practice, but then he would also, go to the court and deal with very worldly affairs, right? And then he would come back and take a little bit of rest and then go back again into the court and make some judgments relating to the world and the laws of the world, and then come back and have a very Vaishnava diet and chanting practice. And we see that from this we can gain inspiration that we have those boundaries where we keep our spiritual practice, but then we also think about how do we further this. And it always gives me inspiration whenever I apply it to my life. So I also work vocationally as an engineer, but then when I get to travel to different places, I get to see and meet a lot of devotees, and we all go and serve together, and it's always like a very sweet um, moment because no matter who you are or where you are, there's someone somewhere sharing Krishna consciousness around the world. So we have so many different time zones. So somewhere somebody is doing something. So why don't we also just take part, and the sort of satisfaction and bliss that you derive from book distribution, I have not found that anywhere because you are literally distributing the sound vibration that has been put into words. So this is like the very Srimad Bhagavatam I found at the used bookstore. So it came without the jacket, and it was just the Canto 1, Part 1, and it was probably like a 1970s print. And it was like $5. So I was like, okay, what the heck? I'll take it. Uh, so little did I know this is going to change my life. But the sound vibration has been transcribed and written down, and the sound vibration is a spiritual sound vibration. So, I was hearing on the radio the other day is like, well, books have a high carbon footprint if you're just going to read it once, but the beauty about our literature is it's meant to be there to last for hundreds of years, and it can be passed down through the generations, but we are most likely going to read the literature again and again because unlike a newspaper or a online article, this is always going to get fresh and fresh, newer and newer meanings to us as we go through the different ages and stages of life. So similarly, why do this alone? Why not include, everyone from our community who are receptive to this message to be part of this? And part of that is just like you have, French fries and ketchup, they go well together. So similarly, when we do the sharing of books, and then we hold space for such people who are recipients of the books, because loneliness is one of the things that's literally killing society. And the U.S. Surgeon General mentioned that a lot of people are lonely, a lot of people are depressed, and it's been recognized that when we have gatherings where people can come as they are, come with the glue that holds everybody together is the wisdom literature, and they discuss the wisdom, absorb the wisdom, ask questions. It's like a therapy session, and that's one feedback that I received from a study group that I organized on Fridays for based on the Bhagavad Gita, and she's a person who doesn't come to temple. She's not into all that, but she's like, okay, I'll check out the study group, and it's like it gives them an opportunity where they can ask questions, get their questions answered, and also feel heard, as well as feel like they are part of something greater. And it's something wonderful whether one's a householder, has a vacation, spend a little bit of your time on during the week or on the weekends to just dedicate yourself towards this wonderful mission. And in doing so, the bliss that you derive from this service is unparalleled. And you're directly actually having an impact on society, and feel that reciprocation, and ultimately, you know, you are going there as a representative of Lord Chaitanya, and just, the ego likes to hear the word yes. And oftentimes when you go on books, you hear no. People, a lot of people are not as interested, or people just kind of go by you. They're just putting on their, earbuds and just going to walk past. But that's actually really good for you, because what that does is it teaches you humility, it teaches you tolerance, it teaches you how to apply the philosophy. And this really and truly leads to spiritual growth. And I found that there's various different avenues and ways to do books, and going to festivals and having book tables, and you meet all kinds of people who are looking for knowledge, and making sure that not only they have the knowledge, but they have a real life person to talk to, because we are a society of personalists and not impersonalists. So giving our association, giving our time is also important part of Sankirtan and sharing Krishna consciousness. So once you distribute a book, you can be like, hey, I'm not here to distribute you a book. You can actually come to our Bhagavad Gita classes, and study. We can all study and read together, and just make sure that inclusivity is always there. And in this way, you find a lot of reciprocation from Krishna, because Krishna and specifically Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, they send all these souls who may not be qualified from a strict sense, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so compassionate, he gets everybody involved in their spiritual program. So that's their compassion that we're kind recipients of. So it's good to have not only balance in one's own life, but also to have a higher mission, that what's the goal of my life? What do I want to do that will have an impact on my society? So um yeah, those are some additional thoughts I had on that. Any reflections or questions on any experiences you might have had that you want to share?
Is it a quiet group today, everyone?
Yeah, Svetlana, Ardi.
Lana, Shashi, Nardi, anybody have anything they want to share? If not, I can share something, but I don't want to be the only one having a dialogue here.
Yeah.
Maybe they're busy driving or something. I want to ask, what about these relationships? How's the relationship building been when you do these study groups? What have you noticed as far as change from somebody that initially comes with your to where they're at now, as far as the developing of those relationships because it's built around something like studying or, of course, Krishna consciousness, the dynamics.
Yeah, so what happens is I've noticed that people have changed their, they may be used to going to some sort of social event with their friends on a Friday night and or a Thursday night or what have you. And then they come to this and they find that the energy is different. It's a very uplifting energy. And when they feel that uplifting energy, and all we're doing is reading Bhagavad Gita as it is, and just reflecting amongst ourselves, asking questions and answering questions. And that experience helps them in their life on a week-to-week basis. And to the point where one of them mentioned that this feels like therapy to me. And another person, and that very person also mentioned that this whole process, it feels like a sense of belonging, which is what people need. And they actually had missed one session and they could actually feel it. They were away out of town and they could feel like, well, there's something missing. Just like, you know, if we haven't done our spiritual practice for the day for whatever reason, we feel like there's something that's missing, right? So they feel like this is something that they can really connect to and it's a simple, just spend an hour of your time, bring your Bhagavad Gita, keep the digital devices away, and let's focus on discussing real life and how can Bhagavad Gita uplift us. And that experience has been great, and people come voluntarily. It's not that, we have, tons of other things going on. It's just a Bhagavad Gita program. We sit together on a circle, like a semicircle, and we share. And people share a lot of things about their life that they normally wouldn't because at a typical, a large festival program, it might be too busy and for people to just, they may just say Hare Krishna and leave. But a lot of people need attention these days. And when we give them the attention based on the wisdom centered, the anchor, then it just fosters good things. And we also do fun things. Like we went on a hike recently to see the fall colors. And oftentimes devotees can be sitting and very sedentary lifestyle, sitting and chanting, reading, so forth. But I said, okay, this time we'll focus on just going for a hike and experiencing Krishna in nature. And we went for like 6 miles or so. And it was great because devotees oftentimes don't get out and they felt very invigorated and refreshing. So doing fun things like that is also really key to kind of build on that trust because our society ultimately is based on love and trust. And we have to hold safe spaces for everyone.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
I
Yep.
have a quick question, Prabhu. Thank you so much for the encouragement. How do you facilitate um, do you, when you go in a semicircle, does everybody have like a time to speak, or is it kind of just open-ended? Or do you speak first? I'm kind of curious on how to get the crowd to kind of speak a little more when we're speaking about Bhagavad Gita and things.
Mm. Well, thank you for your question, already. So, um, my only rule, I guess, that I have is that, the discussion should be led by a person who is very familiar with the philosophy, so typically like a initiated practitioner. But then what I do is I will be the first to break the ice. So I'll be the first one to read the verse, translation, and purport. And then what I do is, because I don't want to make this all about me lecturing to others, it's more of a discussion group. So I just, empower another person. Okay, why don't you read the verse translation and the purport? And even though they may struggle with the Sanskrit, I still I'm encouraging that with their, mispronunciation of even certain English words, which are a little bit foreign to them as well, because Prabhupada's English is also quite different from what people use in language today. I just encourage them to read. And then what I do is I pause to just do, and this is what I learned from Vaisheshikar Prabhu, is just some reflections and questions. So some people say, hey, this is something that I experienced in my life this week, and this is so true. Or I saw somebody on TikTok talk about discipline and how discipline can lead to freedom, and that's something that we were talking about in the Bhagavad Gita verses. And oh, another thing, something that Yamuna Devi, who's a senior disciple of Prabhupada in our movement, and she left her body a few years ago. She coined this phrase, Krishna magic. So somebody has a question, who asks a question from the study group. I tried to answer to the best of my ability, but then you will see in the next verse or next purport, Srila Prabhupada's answering that very question. So when they had that question and they experienced that in the next, 2, 3 minutes, that question's answered from the Bhagavad Gita, naturally there is a magical experience there that people feel. And it's very mystical. So one thing is to, facilitate the session, but also to empower others and then try to answer their questions to the best of your ability. So that kind of gets them to, share. And I would say, meeting in a circle, keeping the group to 15 people or less, have has people who are very usually quiet and don't really say much on a bigger festival or bigger Sunday program to open up. So I hope that kind of helps, Nardi.
Yes, it does. Thank you. I think also it being a study group and them understanding like that's the kind of mood of the program or what
Yeah.
we're doing here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's everyone has their strengths, as I mentioned. Some people have strengths in kirtan. My interest is more into like philosophy and how do I use that in Krishna service. Is okay, like I used to go to Bible study, right? And they used to have Wednesday Bible study. And then when I found out about Krishna consciousness, I got deeper into love of God. And I said, okay, how can we see see to it that we meet with one another in person once a week? And how do we, create this mood where you come as you are, so people come in with their jeans and, t-shirts or whatnot, and we all sit in a circle, so we're not one person's higher than the other, and not one person's more important than the other. And we say, hey, my only requirement is bring the physical copy of Bhagavad Gita. We'll keep the distracting phones off and away. And surprisingly, there's a lot of people who are the Gen Z who are always around their phones, but this is the one time that they don't even have an inclination to like look at their phones. And for them, it's like very remarkable or crazy. Like, hey, I spent an hour not looking at my phone, and it gives them an opportunity to just be like, hey, I'm going to immerse myself in this meditation on Krishna's words. And then people may ask challenging questions. And sometimes just having you there to trying to answer this, question or objection they may have in a purport helps them kind of calm down a bit. Because if they were to read that very verse by themselves, they may have a lot of mental blocks, and that mental blocks will prevent them from going further into understanding Krishna consciousness. So you being there, figuratively holding their hand to understand these points in Krishna consciousness goes a long way. So that's why I mentioned the French fries and ketchup analogies. Yeah, you can eat French fries by yourself, but with ketchup is usually complementary. So when you have the book distribution and the study groups for people who are interested in going deeper, it allows them to inculcate the wisdom a lot better.
Thank you so much.
Are you passing out flyers to the study groups when you're distributing books? Like flyers?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I usually distribute. I was like, sometimes this is one thing I learned from a senior Prabhupada disciple who's part of a farm community, the Sharanagati farm community. So he'll have a card and he'll take that card and he would say, check out our eco village, right? Or if you have a temple or something at a yoga studio, oh, check out our Bhakti Yoga Lounge, right? So that kind of is the hook to kind of get them to stop when you have a book table. And then Here we have books on yoga and meditation. You can show them the Gita, there's various different books. And then, so we're not going to leave you alone and take a donation. You can also come to our free classes. So that kind of gets them interesting. Oh, okay, you guys have, classes on this because oftentimes people struggle with the book there and maybe the book's not being read. It'll just sit on the shelf. So this gives them an excuse for them to take their Gita or whatever book it is, Ishopanishad, and get it off their shelf, come together, read, assimilate the wisdom, and we'll see you next week. And it gives them a nice regimen and routine to really look forward to as we, get through all the year and through the seasons, and they find that it's quite beneficial. So that's what I usually do. I'll have a flyer, and I said, okay, yeah, you can come to, our study group, and we just bring your Bhagavad Gita that you just have, and that's it. That's
Okay, so you have a study group flyer. That was my question.
Yes, study group flyer. I don't know if I have it
A
here.
particular flyer for the study group. Okay.
Yeah, I call it transcendental pages.
And people like it. They come from those tables sometimes.
Yeah, some people come, some people are shy. So I mentioned on the flyer, like, live to your highest potential by meditating on the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. And we meet on Fridays. And the reason why Fridays is because I travel a lot on work. So I know Friday evenings are the days that I don't really travel on work. So that's something I can keep as a householder practitioner. And other people are also able to come. So I'm like, great. Um,
All right.
yeah. So that's something I use on book distributions. Like when I have that, I said, okay, well, you can be part of this. So they have something to come to. So when I go in books, like we have had like I'm trying, some people are very shy to check a study group out. I've noticed that in society, and it's one thing. Another good thing is just to have a follow-up. So just have like their contact information in case they may be shy to come to a study group, but they may be, okay to come to some other program, right? If you're distributing prasadam somewhere in society or having some sort of a event that's more neutral or having something that's in a yoga studio, they may want to come to that and just kind of gradually make them more comfortable because sometimes people have their reservations on lots of things, but all you do is just get their contact information, and when they're ready, you are welcome to come. And the other thing I also do is that um, I make sure that the study group, anytime anybody comes, it's not, even though we're progressing through the Gita, it's still described in a way that people don't feel lost when they come. So a newcomer can come to any of these programs and they can just kind of plug and play and not feel like they've lost anything because I don't go into deep esoteric aspects of our philosophy. So we just focus on the wisdom and say, okay, today we're reading from chapter 3, verse 34, and we're going to go ahead. So that's
What
what I do.
advice do you have for someone who has never done book distribution really? How to set up a table? Like in Laredo, we have a little group, but maybe Lana and Shashi want to try setting up a table somewhere. What, like a market or like in front of a Walmart or in front of a dollar store, shopping mall? What experience do you have with these places and asking permission and the follow-up?
I would say like you have to look for events. Events are a great place to have a book table and find events that are, very, like family friendly and, they have some, mode of goodness. So example, like a farmer's market on a Saturday morning, things like that. I would say the sweet spot is to spend about 2 to 3 hours, not more than that, because if you're just a small team going out, just have a small book table. You don't need a large one. Have a nice book stand so that the books kind of face you. And then make sure you have a nice tablecloth. And my thing is, if you're able to say that, hey, we are a nonprofit, can we set up a booth within the farmers market or whatnot? Or sometimes if they have like a street festival, there's, people doing all sorts of stuff outside as you're going into the street festival. So you could just set up just kind of beyond the sidewalk and just have a small book table and then I would say have the cards. If you have like program at a yoga studio or whatever, to distribute that out and just, engage with people um, on whatever level you can on sharing the wisdom and having a good variety of books, um, including, do you have programs for people who speak Spanish?
Yeah, we're trying to start that up once I get two more arms and three more heads. So hopefully in the next year or so, when we get a little bit more help, we can start that. We were doing some years back before COVID, but definitely it's an avenue that can really be explored and expanded. We're 75% Hispanic in San Antonio. Laredo especially too. It'd be a nice place to start once we have a little bit more momentum and growth, you know. So yeah, it's something definitely in the back of my mind.
Okay, so Laredo also, I was just going to say that Laredo would be also a good place to do Spanish uh, books and anybody speak Spanish here?
Yeah, Nardi speaks Spanish. I believe Lana and Shashi speak a little Spanish because of where they're located. I do a little myself.
Yeah, I speak a little Spanish myself. So whenever I talk, I like go to like a like in, whenever there's like a big fiesta or like some sort of Latin fest, food festival, I would go there and, have a book table and just talk to people. And people are very pious. And I really like you have Un Gusto Superior, the Spanish Higher Taste, the Spanish Bhagavad Gita, The Perfection of Yoga. So yeah, those are kind of really good books. We had a program, we had somebody from Mexico visiting on International Yoga Day. We had a program at a community center, and I said, "Oh, it's International Yoga Day, and this is books on yoga." And she took Spanish Bhagavad Gita. So yeah, it's really nice to have that option available and also to have spaces for them. And yeah, I think that's a huge potential to, reach out to the Hispanic population, especially if they're a large percentage in your area. And having these books, which maybe, 5, 10, $10, at most, I think it's very accessible to them. And yeah, and they can be engaged wonderfully as well um, in this movement. And yeah, if there's devotees or visiting who speak Spanish or whatnot, then we should allow them to have these types of programs. So it's a good avenue, and you have language cards as well. And it's I've distributed books in Spanish, and it's wonderful. It's good to get the language out there. So I think one thing is to have a diversity of books. So yes, there's the Bhagavad Gita, and there's these books that we have, but there's a lot of new books that are there, like the Four Questions by Vaisheshika Prabhu, or the Hiding in Unnatural Happiness by Devamrita Swami. So small books that kind of meet people where they're at, and then they can focus on their wisdom journey. Another thing that can be done is if there's any yoga studios to partner with them, offer like a kirtan and books, like kirtan, a little talk on Bhagavad Gita, and have some books there. And I find that books go out quite a bit from that. So um, even though like I was in a small town of 20,000 people, which is very conservative Christian town, but they had the yoga studio and we had sound bath. So we collaborated with somebody doing sound bath. We did kirtan. I spoke from Bhagavad Gita very briefly, and then we had kirtan, and then they said that we're going to have the proceeds of the event go to some animal shelter. But then I mentioned that, we also have books on the yoga wisdom, and they're by donation, and we had lots of people take them. So just making it accessible to everyone.
Shashi says, "Thank you. Have to leave, but enjoyed the insight. Hare Krishna."
Oh, okay, wonderful. Thank
Great.
you so much.
So I guess we can conclude here unless anybody has any further questions or comments. Small group today, but nevertheless, we will upload the talk on YouTube as well, so anybody that was unable to make it can still get some insight and get some understanding on how to distribute the books in many different ways. Does anybody else have anything they want to share? Comments, questions? If not, we can
Hare
thank.
Krishna.
Okay,
Yes,
Lana.
Ratlana.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. I wanted to just say that I really appreciate your insight on the beginners part of Krishna consciousness and book distribution. So Bhagavan Narada mentioned that Laredo might start book distribution, but it's really 99% of people speak Spanish here, and we
Great.
don't. It's good to have somebody who would speak Spanish, and it's a little difficult, I guess, at this moment, but maybe Krishna has something in store for us. But I also wanted to ask you a little practical question, because I am a beginner. And I am reading sometimes Bhagavad Gita at work, and people would ask, "What are you reading?" So I don't know how in a very short way how to answer what am I reading, and kind of my goal is to spark some interest in them, because usually people whatever, and I really don't want to say something wrong.
Yeah.
Or if you can help.
I
with
understand
that.
what you're saying. Yeah. So you have this, Bhagavad Gita, and people ask you, how do you want to respond in a way that, gets them more interested than turns them away? And you can mention, I mean, there's a few things. I mean, there's not a set rule, but I like to mention that, like this is a wonderful, ancient wisdom literature that talks about, oneself and how one can live to their highest potential, based on, a spiritual science. And it's a book on the yoga philosophy. Each chapter is a yoga. And by meditating around this, it gives me a lot of tranquility and peace. And that's why I refer to this on a daily basis. And it has changed my life for the better. And I think, if you're open to it, you can also take to this and also meditate on it on a daily basis. So that's something
Well,
short and sweet. Yeah.
that's wonderful. Thank you so much. That I will rewatch the recording and write down it on a piece of paper and learn it
Yeah.
to say.
In
Thank you
Spanish,
very
you
much.
can mention that, like, my
Mm.
Spanish is pretty broken, but it's like, este libro Bhagavad Gita tal como es. Es libro es gran filosofía en todo el mundo, la filosofía de yoga. Un donativo, por favor.
I can do this.
Can I add something to that too? It's like if you're reading the Bhagavad Gita, people are going to see it as a book. Just treat it as a form of literature too. It's a very, very popular form of literature. It's not only just for Hare Krishnas. I've met so many people in the streets that are like, "Oh yeah, Bhagavad Gita. Okay, cool, thanks," and they just walk by. So you can just say, "Yeah, I'm just reading the Bhagavad Gita. It's supposedly the world's oldest meditation book." And then they get
Yeah.
inquired and they get, "Wow, what is that?" And just you can keep it very simple and it sparks their interest and say, "Hey, yeah, I know where to go get another one, or I have a friend that has a copy. If you're ever interested, I can give you a copy or something like that." But that's another way to do it is just say, "Hey, it's a very popular book. I mean, so many people have them within our area, and we don't even realize it." I go to friends' houses sometimes in the past, and I would just see Prabhupada's books randomly sitting on different shelves in different people's houses, and it's from devotees that have distributed those books, so they make their way around. It's interesting. I forgot where it was the other day. It was around somewhere. My brain's foggy. I've been traveling a lot. And I set up my table. Oh yeah, I set up my table at a university, and this guy, he was part of the admin there. He's an engineer. He's helping build up all the colleges. I guess it's always good to share a couple of Sankirtan stories during this call.
Yep.
And he was coming out of the office as I was wrapping up because it was a slow day, and I thought like, well, whatever. Krishna, we'll do better next time. I just didn't make I did distributed books, but I wasn't satisfied. And right when I was about to put the cover on my big yoga book sign. This man comes out of the office and he says, "Hey, I saw your books." And he goes, "What's that book on that pamphlet on Krishna?" And I said, "Oh, well, this is a Krishna pamphlet." And he goes, can I have one of these?" And I said, "Yeah." And then I showed him the Krishna book. He took the Krishna book. And then I showed him the Bhagavad Gita. He took Bhagavad Gita and he's like, "My wife practices yoga every morning and it's something very spiritual for her. And she also does in the evening. And she's gotten me into this stuff. So I'm going to give it to her as a gift. And I like it a lot." And I said, "Oh, okay, cool." And we got to talking. We were from the same town. We're about the same age. We had a lot of similarities. And then he asked me, he goes, "Have you ever been to this place called Kalachanji's? It's a really nice restaurant." And I said,
Oh,
"Yeah." I said, "That's like our sister temple. Those are our friends, you know." Turns out he had been to the restaurant. He'd taken prasadam. His wife's from Dallas. He's gone to the temple there, but his whole demeanor changed. Like, "Oh, wow, you're for real. You're not out here just pushing books. Like, you're part of this thing." And I gave them an invitation to a yoga program we had. They didn't make it, but still, I'll probably see them around, maybe not. But it was something that just changed his whole life, actually. Just
mhm.
I saw it change, and I thought, well, when the time's ready and he's ready, he may come around. But it was nice to see, like, wow, there's people here that have taken prasadam. There's people here that have already seen Krishna in some temple. And the fact that I just went out, like, I got to have this exchange, how Krishna will line everything up. So even if we don't speak Spanish fluently, we can still do wonders. I had devotees just drop me off in random parts of Mexico City when I lived there, or Monterrey, very dangerous places I didn't even
Oh,
know.
yeah.
And I just had my little mantra. I wrote it down on paper, and I did this on purpose. And I would speak it sometimes in a very broken dialect just to
Yeah.
lighten up the mood. And then I would distribute the books. And it was actually easy because I would just speak 6 lines and it was like, "Okay, make the donation, take the book." So it got to the point and people would smile and laugh. They had that experience and they took the book. So it's not so much about we know as much as it is about our intentions. And
Yeah.
Krishna will reciprocate if we just make that initial step. Like Vaisheshika Prabhu, one thing he says, "We're successful the minute our foot just goes out onto the sidewalk.
Yes.
Everything after that is a bonus, you know?"
Yeah.
So if maybe at one point or another, you and Shashi or even you and your daughter, maybe 3 or 4 months down the line, you can say, "Hey, we're going to do this book table in March on a Saturday at a holistic yoga event, and we're going to be there for 3 hours, and we'll take some cupcakes or we'll take some cookies and we'll pack a lunch for ourselves, and for 3 hours." And maybe I can go down too if we plan it out like 4 months from now. If there's any festivals or anything in the area, we can just go out there for the day and we can set up a little table. And then it becomes very addicting. It's like a shot, you know? It keeps you going. It's like Vaisheshika Prabhu said, it's our oxygen. It's like breathing above water when we're just out there and you make a few connections and you'll see Krishna will send somebody who's like, "Oh my God, I just moved here to Laredo. I used to go to the Los Angeles temple every week," or something mystical will happen like that. And that's that Krishna magic. And you go like, "Wow, this is something that's already all been predetermined and arranged. I'm being used as an instrument." So, we shouldn't also, it can be overwhelming to think, "Oh, setting up tables every weekend, I can't do this." But if we can be practical, we meet
Yeah.
somebody in 2 to 3 months, we make the arrangement, and maybe that person, because they came from book distribution, they can start spearheading that up, Like you came from reading a book and now you're into book distribution. Um, my wife came from Prasadam and now she's always distributing Prasadam. I notice that seems to be a trend sometimes.
Yes.
Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
and I would say for Svetlana as well, like it doesn't have to be a book table on a street corner at a festival. It could be as simple as you taking a few extra books in your car with you,
sure.
and you're meeting some coworker or somebody at a work event that's interested, and you can just go and be like, here's the wisdom book. I have extra copies, and you can please you can give some small donation for the printing costs and so forth. So you get them engaged in the transcendental exchange of them appreciating the literature. And that could be your book distribution. Like I've actually had that, take a nice ribbon and take the higher taste and Bhagavad Gita and perfection of yoga, put it on a nice ribbon and be like, here's a package. So the amount of time it takes for you to distribute one book, you distribute three books in one shot, right? So the book distribution can be as simple as you taking a book or a few books and just take it wherever you go, and because you never know who you're going to meet, and then you'll be like, hey, we actually have some extra copies, you can take it. So um, I've done it for work events. I've actually had Srimad Bhagavatam when I was on a plane, and I had it visible on my front seat pocket where people can see it. So then I was just chanting my japa, and this lady next to me was like, I'm a devout Muslim. What is this book about? And I said, it's about, a spiritual connection on devotion on the devotional platform. And she's like, I want to know more about devotion. And she was like, can I have that book? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then she gave me like $20 on the spot, and I gave it to her. Just by having, I wasn't even trying to distribute a book. I just had the book there to plan to read it. So she took it away. But and even at a work event, I was like, okay, let me take the risk of bringing the book. So what happens is Lord Chaitanya mystically gives an arrangement where he sends some person who's ripe for this type of wisdom and this type of knowledge that to give it to. And I was like, oh, I met this, one lady at a trade show. And we were talking, and I'm like, oh, do you do yoga? And she's like, yeah. It's like, oh, I have books on yoga. And I gave her a nice package of, Perfection of Yoga, Higher Taste, and Bhagavad Gita softbound, and put it in a nice ribbon from the dollar store. And she's like, "Oh, here you can take it, and you can just like e-transfer me the funds you would like to give for this." And she's like, "Sure." And then I was able to do it at a work event, which was crazy. And I had my coworker take a picture of me and that person. So it was just you just never know when the opportunities come. But the Vaisheshika Prabhu mentions there's the four laws of book distribution, which is your spiritual practice, your sadhana, getting the books, and the more books you have, the more you're able to actually sell and distribute, and always trying to be organized in terms of making sure you have adequate stock of books and you have ways of collecting donations electronically, because not everyone carries cash these days, or even having language cards. So you may have language cards where you can talk to people and showcase to them the books and just show them the card, and they'll be like, okay, they can understand in their own language. So that's available from the BBT. So, but yeah, well, thank you for having me, Bhagwan Narada Prabhu.
Sure, great. Lana, if you're interested, I just got added to the North American Sankirtan NASLT, I think.
NASLT, yeah.
What leadership team? Is that what it
Yeah,
is?
it's the leadership team. Yeah, I actually have if I can share briefly, the picture of the person at work at the trade show. Uh,
Oh,
I don't know if you can see it.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so there I'm at a trade show in Alberta, and we had Perfection of Yoga and some other books there, and she's like, "Yep, I'll take it." Just
I
crazy. So I was like, "Let me dare and try something," and then Krishna just reciprocates somehow. So
Nice. I took a book to jury duty one time just in that same like mindset. Let me try this, and then I ended up distributing it. So
oh
it's
yeah,
it's a
that's
nice
that's a
it's a
great.
nice feeling.
I
Yeah,
think I think we underestimate the power of distributing one book sometimes because we really get caught up in like large quantities, or we see other people distributing thousands or hundreds and thousands of books. But
Mhm.
just one book, two books can change the course of someone's entire life. It'll always end up in the right hands, even if they put it on their shelf. My guru tells this story about a daughter, a young Mexican girl. I guess I'll end here. We got 2 minutes. She
Sure.
got a book. Then her brother said, "Wow, this is a nice book." She became a devotee. She got initiated. And then the brother said, "This is a nice book." Then he took the book and he became initiated, became a devotee. Then the mother said, "What are y'all doing?" And then she got the book. She became a devotee. And then the father said, "What is everybody in my family doing? They're all vegetarian. They're all meditating." So he read the book, and then he became a devotee, and the whole family became devotees off of just one book
Wow.
in due course of time. So, yeah, one book at a time can change somebody's life. Thank you so much for your time, Anuttama Prabhu.
Okay.
Appreciate you. I guess we'll go ahead and conclude here. I hope you all have a good weekend. Have a good rest of your day. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All right. I'll share the link with you later. Thank you.
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.